It's time once again for another thrilling episode of Mark Out Radio. For the next hour, sit back, pull the stick out of your ass, and enjoy. Be warned though, smarks and internet know-it-alls will be offended, annoyed, and generally pissed off at what's about to happen to your ear holes. You've been warned. Now, Mark Out Radio.
Welcome back. Oh, it has been a hot minute, hasn't it? Jesus. Sorry about that. Real life gets in the way sometimes. I don't know what to tell you. Oh, Jesus. Big fucking microphone just gets in the way all the time. If you're in chat on Twitch, welcome. If you're watching this on the YouTube replay, comment below, like, share, all that other bullshit. If you're listening to this on podcast, hey, listen, this is where my bread and butter was for the longest time. So welcome. Mark Out Radio. Back in the saddle, I guess. Is that how that works? Back in the saddle? Is that still a thing the kids say? I'm fucking old. I know. All right, so we're fast approaching episode 100, but for now, we are on episode 98 for July 28th, 1997, out of the Charleston Civic Center, Charleston, West Virginia. Hosted tonight by Tony Schiavone, Larry Zbyszko, Mike Tenay, and Bobby the Brain Heenan. This is Nitro's 58th win in a row over Raw with a 3.4 to Raw's 2.9. There are 9,575 in attendance with 8,769 paying a $129,411 gate. No merch sales numbers. Sorry about that. I look for these things, but every now and then, even I come up dry. I don't know what to tell you. Show kicks off, as always, with Tony on a bump. Since the advent of the Nitro Girls, they are also there to kick the show off. Also, as always in the 90s, the women get no budget, so they're wearing their own clothes. Good thing that Eric had the foresight to hire professional cheerleaders who would have access to black leggings and sports bras on command. The funny thing is, the Nitro Girls numbers are bolstered this week with 2 local cheerleaders from the Hornets. Now, at the time, Eric spun this as the same kind of thing the WWE does today by having local wrestlers as security. Now, oh, Jesus, I'm just looking in the chat and my face is way too big for all of you to be there. But I guess we're just stuck like that for the show. Sorry about that. All right, so good thing it's just in a bottom corner there, right? Anyways, now security and being in a choreographed routine are vastly different animals. And later he would admit that some of the girls' travel wasn't being reimbursed in a timely manner. So from time to time, all of the Nitro Girls wouldn't show up at the venue because no one would bother to have a meeting with them to go over their concerns. Now, you work with what you have. And I will always give Bischoff this. He manages problems well. He wouldn't have so many problems if he would just take a couple of steps to prevent them before they even happen, but he manages them reasonably well. Anyways, the Nitro Girls dance while fans divide their time equally between trying to get a handful of one of them and get their signs on the air. Now, remember, we are heading into Road Wild, and I know it's been a few months since we've talked about this stuff, but we are headed towards Road Wild or, Hog Wild, depending on who you are and which version of this you're listening to. But of course, the phrase Hog Wild, probably some biker explained what that actually was to Bischoff at some point, and he decided to call it Road Wild, and hoping that wrestling fans had the attention capacity that they tend to have and forget all about that. So anyways, this week's Nitro is building towards that. So first match of the night has Kurt Hennig and Ric Flair defeating Vicious and Delicious, which is, of course, Scott Norton as Vicious and Buff Bagwell as Delicious, I guess. I don't know, girls. Anyway, 2 out of 5 for that match. The announcers again assume that Hennig has joined the Horsemen. This has worked so well for them in the weeks since Kurt arrived in WCW. I mean, Larry Zbyszko didn't, but Tony and Mike just couldn't quite help themselves. Norton uses Hennig's hair to whip him around like he's a female wrestler, and that's when Hennig stopped selling and bumping his ass off for him. Now, I like Scott Norton, but even he has admitted that at the time he would stiff or shoot on wrestlers he thought were going to take his spotlight. Regardless, Hennig no-sold the shit out of this match, and so did Scott Norton. So basically, two guys ended up going into business for themselves, and it already sucked before that started happening. Now, back from break, the NWO is in control. Ultimately, though, like I said, this was three guys going into business for themselves and Ric Flair. Syxx comes out to fuck with Flair. Norton helps him out while inside the ring, Hennig performs the perfect plex on Bagwell that has yet to be named in WCW. They just call it a suplex. Anyways, Bagwell does not answer the 3 count for the big L to Kurt Hennig. Back from break, the Nitro girls had just finished performing in the ring. They decided to do the routine again in the aisle to drag out some time at the urging of the producer to Nitro Girls Spice. Gene Okerlund then does an in-ring promo with Luger. Time for Luger to do what Luger does best, and he flexes, getting no reaction to his words. Now, Luger claims that he's had Hogan's contract rewritten to compel mandatory title defenses every 30 days, and next week on Nitro, Luger and Hogan will have a title match on the go-home edition of the show. Now, a good promo would have pointed out that because it's already been, I don't know, pull a number out of your ass, 23 days, he has no choice but to defend the title on next week's show as a result of Luger's lawyers fucking with Hogan's lawyers. I mean, hindsight though, right? For those of you keeping track at home, beer and toothpaste taste horrible together. Back to the announcers, who then explained what actually happened and did a better job of the promo than Luger and Gene just did, but of course did not talk about the fact that it has been 20 fucking who knows how many days since Hogan defended the title, and that's why it's important that Luger's lawyers put in this 30-day clause into Hogan's WCW contract. Even if this was a contract for Luger and Hogan's match, it wouldn't over-encompass Hogan's actual WCW contract, but whatever, it's wrestling. Let's suspend disbelief, shall we? After this, Ultimo Dragon defends the title against Prince Iaukea. He retains, of course. I give it 2.5 out of 5. Iaukea's burial continues, but at least Dragon did make him look good despite it having to eat a loss to the new champ to solidify his reign. The announcers concentrated on the match for about 15% of it, mostly spending their time talking about Road Wild. It was a well-performed match, but just it didn't matter is the problem. No one cared what was going on. Iaukea comes out, he does his dance. Fans don't give a shit anymore because now he's a jobber. They didn't really give a shit before, perfectly honest. And Ultimo Dragon's fantastic. He's over hard, but it's just, there was just nothing fantastic or interesting or, I don't know, there's no fire to it at all. It was just two workers working together. That's honestly my best critique. That's why it gets mediocre pointing. Gene has a rant promo after this with Flair. Flair gets a cheap pop as he starts this off, calling out the name of the town that they're in. I love how Flair and Mick Foley dislike each other for the exact same fucking reason. They both will go on record as saying over and over and over that they dislike one another because they each go for the cheap fucking pops and cheap heat. Like, that is one of the reasons why wrestling is so fun. All right, anyways, Flair calls Hennig out onto the ramp and welcomes him as the newest member of the Horsemen. The funny thing is Hennig still is playing the whole I'm not a horseman yet thing, which is fine. Mango and Benoit. Mango? Wow. I really got to work on my spell checking. Mango kind of at the end there. Just what? Come on. Glorious. Thank you. Anyways, Mongo and Benoit come out as Hennig swears up and down that he's not a horseman yet, even as Flair presents a ring girl to the Horseman. Jesus. I don't get me wrong. I mean, she was old and reasonably cute, but like, I loved the fact, this is the problem. I watch this shit way too closely, but if you go back and you watch these either before or after these shows, tell me if you spot like a ring tattoo around her navel, because I don't know if it was real, because I know this was a thing that women did in the 90s, the tramp stamp and the ring around the navel tattoo. And it was, it was a Target, wasn't it? What? It was. Anyways, Jesus Christ. Oh, man. I know it's been a while, but like, where's your sense of humor? All right, so they then job out the Texas Hangmen, Killer and Psycho. I gave this one 2 out of 5. Now, the Horsemen continue to job out no-name Hangmen tag teams, which sucks because Benoit and McMichael, well, Benoit mostly, McMichael kind of, are actually fairly decent as a team and actually kind of entertaining as a team. But the problem is that they just keep jobbing them to nobodies. No one's going to give a flying fuck about them, which is what happens here. And the bad part is that nobody gives a flying fuck about this whole Horseman angle either, because of the fact that the active wrestlers, like Rick goes out and he does this tag team with the guy that he's trying to encourage to join the Horsemen. Fair enough. But he's the only one in the match not actually jobbing and selling and bumping all over the place. He's not stiffing anybody. He's not being a dickhead. And then you've got Benoit and McMichael go out there against a Hangmen team that came in from the former AWA, I think they were in ICW. They held, to this point, they held tag team titles in 2 places, 1 time each. And very much paper champions. Anyways, they jobbed in the AWA. They started as a tag team in 1987. They did manage, like I said, to win some tag titles from 91 through 96. Their WCW run, though, would eventually break them up, with Frank Vizzy, who was Psycho, went on to become Bull Payne, who spent some time in ECW and Big Japan Pro Wrestling before finding a more permanent home in the IWA and the indie circuit. Now, Mean Mike Moran, who's Killer, ended up in a new tag team in WCW called Disorderly Conduct. Now, we're going to get to them at some point because they were fucking awful too. Anyways, after WCW folded in 2001, he worked in the indies as well as his main job of being a real estate appraiser.
0.
That's a legitimate job.
0.
Listen, a lot of wrestlers the big 5 for pro wrestlers at the end of their careers: real estate agent, real estate appraiser, funeral home director, teacher, and promoter. That's it. When they go into any other thing, it never works out. Anyways, like I said, they after WCW worked in the indies as a real estate appraiser. The Hangmen were inducted into the Puerto Rican Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2018. So, I mean, there's something. Tony Schiavone gets a phone call from Hall and Nash on the air, which obviously was a pre-tape since they were watching the main event, they claimed, which Tony then covered up for after the call was over. Nash to this day does find it amusing that so many of these fuck-ups just didn't matter, and this was one of them. No one cared about the call. Even fewer people cared about the botch. Hall and Nash were crazy over, and even a finger poke wouldn't put an end to that. After this, Alex Wright defeats Chris Jericho to win the WCW World Cruiserweight Championship. I gave it 3.5 out of 5. Back from the break, the Nitro Girls are dancing again. Their music seamlessly transitions into Alex Wright's music. Finally, a decent match on this Nitro card. Both guys worked well together, played the crowd well. Wright ultimately, though, gets the win with a plain old-fashioned German suplex, which Jericho sells well after the bell has been rung. After this, Gene has a rant promo with Dean Malenko. Well, I mean, Jeff Jarrett and Deborah come out first, then Dean Malenko. Now, after Deborah whispers some sweet nothings into Alex Wright's ear, she, as he leaves the ramp like a jackass during a promo. Here's the thing. When you're a wrestler and your match is over and there's a promo that's happening, you never, ever, ever get in the middle of the promo unless you are part of the promo. If you are going to the back, go to the back. There, you don't need to go up the ramp. Go down the side of the ramp like you're supposed to. What the fuck? All of this so that Deborah can show that she is recruiting new members who just happens to be young and a fucking moron and probably is already fucking him. Who the fuck knows? It's Deborah McMichael. Jesus Christ. Malenko and Jarrett cut decent promos, but then, of course, Deborah gets her hands on the microphone and botches her 3 whole lines. Back from break, we start hour 2 with the farty fireworks. The camera pans to a crowd to find a poor dude whose old lady is just pissed. I mean, she is definitely not hot enough to drag you down like this, my man. I hope that since this came out in the 90s, that she is just not in a trailer with you somewhere. I really hope that for you. I really do, because my God, the shit that this bitch was just putting off this. Oh, she was mad, like mad. And I don't know why. Maybe she tried to grab Alex Wright's dick as he walked by and her old man rightly smacked her. I don't know. What?
I'm bad.
No. It's what? If he grabbed one of the Nitro girl's tits, she would smack him, right?
Oh my God!
There you go. All right, after this, Syxx defeats Diamond Dallas Page. I give it 3.5 out of 5. This was an excellent match. First, the announcer stayed on it. DDP was all over Syxx, but after a failed run-in by Vincent, Hennig came down, blasted Page from behind with a foreign object taped to the top of his hand. So when you're punching, that's the part of your fist that does the damage, even in wrestling. When something's taped here, it tends to not like hit somebody, but wrestling. Hennig's got a great worked punch. He could have put it right over his knuckles. It could have been metal and had spikes on it, and it still wouldn't have made contact, but whatever. Anyways, he then rolls Syxx over onto Page for the win. Amazingly, Tony recaps the possibilities of what happened here with with Curt Hennig. I mean, I know I'm setting the bar really high here, but Tony covers the fact that is he NWO? Is he Horseman? Does he really just fucking hate DDP? I mean, good job, Tony. Just no notes. No notes. Anyways, after this, Dean Malenko defeats Hector Guerrero, 2 out of 5. Hector's looking better, but still skipping his leg days, which would actually kind of help with those taped up shitty knees of his. Jarrett and Deborah come out to support their new man. Again, subtle as I am, that is absolutely a dig. Dean scores the W with a submission hold. Chavo comes out to get the shit stomped out of him by a new unnamed stable. Mr. Emotion, of course, sold about none of it. Gene afterwards has a rant promo with Konnan, the bargain bin cholo in residence. But at least he's not rocking the Heisenberg hat anymore. As a side note, tucking your shirt into loose-fitting boxers that are outside of your jeans was the height of male 90s fashion. I mean, here's the thing. Roster in chat, it was a rating party of 2. Exactly, thank you. Now, this t-shirt into loose-fitting boxers that are coming out of your jeans, I think I tried that gimmick for about a week, in addition to the overalls gimmick, where one strap was undone. Yeah, that's how fucking old and lame I am. Before going back to rocking my superior fashion of a plain t-shirt and jeans, I did not wear a lot of labels like I do now, like a whore that I am. After this, we get the 1-800-COLLECT Lee Marshall promo with another garbage weasel dig. He really does need some support, from a writer at this point. It's kind of getting embarrassing. I should actually start keeping track of the garbage weasel digs where they used to get laughs. Like, I do remember laughing at these, and I do remember Brain having to put his hand over his mic because he was laughing at these, but now it's just like too many tries, and he needs something. He needs some sort of support. Maybe one of the boys could help him out with these, because they used to kind of be fun and a highlight, and now they're just kind of like one of those train wreck segments. And it won't be long until 1-800-COLLECT just pulls their support in anyways, because I mean, Jesus. After this, the Giant defeats the Great Muta, 3.5 out of 5 for that one. Now, listen, before you get on my ass about giving a Giant match 3.5 out of 5, this was actually a good match. A Giant comes out of the ring with no music, which is what he's doing right now, and the green light, which is, Dungeon of Doom-esque shit, which is fine. Savage is up in the crowd, cutting a promo with Liz at his side. Now, Muta comes down. Of course, he's got his face all NWO painted up and shit like that. But after the match starts, the NWO theme starts again, and Bischoff comes out to join the announce position. He kicks everybody out except Shivani. Bischoff spends his time on commentary burying the Giant, while Muta puts on a much better showing than most of Giant's opponents, who tend to job within seconds, which is, again, one of the reasons why this got a 3.5 out of 5. Giant makes his comeback, blocks the green mist attack from Muta. Again, half a point just for that, because fuck. Bischoff spent the whole time saying the Giant's a dummy. Now, he then chokeslams Muta through the fucking mat. Giant calls out the NWO. Zbyszko comes out, shoves around Bischoff a bit, to a huge pop from the crowd. He drags him down to the ring, where Giant chokeslams Bischoff with a nice big pop. Now, This was actually a very cool bump that Bischoff took. I'm not a huge fan of Eric, as anybody that's listened to the show for any length of time would know. But this was actually a really good bump. And the fact that the production truck got it back together so quickly and rendered ready to replay it over and over all night long. Like, you know, sometimes you get a replay of something that happened in the show. You're just kind of like, it botched the first time. I don't need to see the replay of it. WWF or whatever, it still does this to this day. Somebody does what can kind of be a cool move from one camera angle, and then they show replays of it from other camera angles, and the other replays show shadow punches or just a botched move. Every angle that they took of this was a actual good pop, and the fans loved it, and it was an actually good bump. Now, don't get me wrong, Giant did cradle him most of the way down. Bischoff did not take this bump like a pro wrestler would have taken this bump, but he's 160 pounds soaking wet. We don't want to break him. We just want it to be cool, all right? Calm down. Now, this is by far one of the best Giant matches and post-match promos in his WCW run. So again, all of that goes together. And again, I'm not going to apologize for it to give him that 3.5 out of 5. Well-deserved and well-earned. Back from break, the Nitro Girls are dancing, this time on some chairs. Now, when I stand this far back on a chair, granted, I probably weigh twice as much as these girls do, it folds up. I'm impressed. I get it. They're cheerleaders and it's the 90s and, the bimbo thing, stuff like that. But I'm low-key impressed that only La Parka in WCW could stand on a chair with this much conviction. Anyways, after that, speaking of La Parka, Konnan defeats him with Sonny Ono in his corner, 3 out of 5. There's a recap before the match here of last week's Latino Fallout. Now, Konnan. Now, before this isn't in my show notes. I just want to point out the fact that Konnan is still advocating for the Latinos on the roster, despite burying them in his promos, is actually something to be happy with Konnan for. Like, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the things he does and a lot of the passive aggressive stuff that he does, but I will say this. He actually is doing what's in his promos and advocating for the Latinos that are in the WCW. And the fact that he's in the NWO now helps that go forward. So as much as I dislike him as a professional, I'm not even going to air quote here, he's actually a wrestling professional. The fact that he is pushing the Latino element of the WCW's roster as much as he is actually kind of cool. Anyways, like I said, 3 out of 5. Konnan, however, is still taping up his elbows with skating elbow pads. Now, I know a lot of kids don't wear these for rollerblading like they were designed for back in the day, but mostly on skateboards and dirt bikes and things like that, right? So anyone that's ever seen or touched one of these elbow pads knows that it's hard. It's hard plastic. Like, it's plastic, but it's fucking hard. It's supposed to save your elbow from shattering if you fall. So he's taping these to his elbow. Now, he doesn't have any elbow strikes, really. Like, he does do that back elbow shot where he's actually hitting the guy with his tricep. But, he does accidentally hit people with these fucking hard elbow pads fairly regularly. So it would be great if he could just not wear rock hard fucking elbow pads. I know it's helping his elbows, but it's doing nothing for anybody else. Anyways, he has moved away from the amateur wrestling boots and he's wearing some traditional pro wrestling boots. I don't know if he forgot them this week and he's wearing somebody else's, or if this is his transition. I guess we'll find out next week if I remember to look. Anyways, La Parka brings the chair to the ring with Konnan's name in black gaffer's tape on it. The ref is distracted by Sonny Ono, of course, because that's Sonny Ono's job. La Parka takes a swing and misses, allowing Konnan to kick the chair into La Parka's face and get the win. Post-match, Psychosis comes out to prevent the beatdown. Overall, a decently well-performed match, which continues a fairly well-conceived of program, and like I said, continues to push Latinos in the WCW who really are getting, they're barely being treated better than the Nitro Girls at this point. Like, it is not 2022. All right. This is, what are we in here again? We're in 1997. Yeah. 1997. I literally just graduated from high school and people are still saying beaner when referring to Mexicans. So just, it's not an excuse. I'm just saying they're getting only what they're getting because Konnan's pushing for it. And of course, the flippy dippy nonsense is fantastic too. Mike Tenay will take a lot of credit for this, by the way, because he's the play-by-play guy. But Mike Tenay wouldn't be there if Konnan didn't grab this gringo and bring him along with him to do the fucking play-by-play, because he actually speaks Mexican version of Spanish. After this, there's an Outsiders pin set commercial. You know, I would love to bust on this fucking pin set, but I literally behind me, you can kind of see there's a little, you see this where my finger is right now if you're watching the video chat? I legit have the first 30 WrestleMania pins in a fucking frame. So I would love to bury the Outsiders pin set, but like, that's even too hypocritical for me, all right? Jesus.
Oh, God damn you. I hate you, motherfucker.
Thank you, Jim. All right, back on the phone again with the announcers. This time it's clear that it's actually a phone call. Unfortunately, Tony uses air quotes for championship committee. I'm not quite sure that was kayfabe, but like whatever... Whatever good feelings I had about Tony for correctly identifying Curt Hennig's possible reasons for laying out DDP are now gone, because the championship committee is supposed to be real in the world of wrestling. So when you air quote it, I don't know if that's supposed to mean that you have no respect for it or that it's fake. But in wrestling, even the marks were like, oh, so is it not really a committee? Anyways, JJ Dillon's on the phone. He's got next week's Hogan Luger match confirmed. He's also got a plan to get Sting back in the ring by September with an offer. Anyways, that's 6 weeks away. So if they're smart, they will milk the holy hell out of this. And of course they will. It's 90s WCW with the NWO, which is pretty much the only thing that's selling right now. After this, the main event, Scott Steiner with Rick Steiner in his corner, of course, defeats Randy Macho Man Savage with Liz in his corner via DQ. Now, this was mostly a match, but also a promo in a very clever wrestling fashion. I gave it 4 out of 5. Don't get mad at me. It was actually a good match, but it got 4 out of 5 because it was a good match with an even better finish. Now, there's a nice back and forth here to start things off, with the Steiner still wearing opposing boots. That will eventually change. Spoiler alert. Listen, producer boy, I'll replace you with my kid. Shut the fuck up. All right. Anyways, Savage grabs the ring announcer's chair, but then thinks better seeing all of the tech that's been strapped to it, and grabs a security chair from ringside instead. Back from break, Savage is back in control of the match. Steiner turns things around with a sharp belly-to-belly. The wrestlers take it out to the crowd to an excellent reaction. Savage low blows Steiner right in front of the ref, but apparently everyone missed it. Who the fuck knows what happened there? Liz takes off her shoe and goes to throw it to Savage. Rick stops her. The Outsiders come down and blindside Rick. Scott leaves the match to help out as the ring area fills up with garbage from the crowd. The match ends with a disqualification. The Steiners are laid out as the NWO puts a beating on them until the Giant comes down to save the day. Giant gets a mic and calls Nash down for a match. Now, Nash waves it off at first, but head of security Dud Dillinger just offers him a clear path down to the ring. Now, I don't know if this was improv or not, but Nash rolled with it pretty good. The show fades to a recap of Bischoff's chokeslam again as Nash climbs up to the top of the ring steps. Now, live, Nash never did get into the ring. He waved off the whole thing and the NWO left, getting pelted with garbage and working their asses off all the way back to the locker room for some heat. Reportedly, they didn't rush either. They worked that fucking live crowd hard and people left exhausted, which, again, had that happened on air, the show would have earned like a whole point from me. As it was, though, there were 2 good matches, 1 very good match, but mostly the card was garbage. 3 out of 5. I'm hoping that Raw was every bit as bad so that the numbers next week don't end up looking like absolute fucking hot. Wow. English. Let's go. Hot garbage. Jesus.
Well, that was an abortion of a show. Should the mood take you, check out markoutradio.com and leave a comment. You can also find links there to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Stitcher channels. You can even leave a voicemail on our Skype. Just click the links and share them.